Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the 71st episode of Visioncon Live, your go-to nerdy talk show. I'm your host, Zach Wilson. But you didn't come here to see me today. You came to meet the man of the hour. He's Tommy from the Last of Us series, Charlie Jade from Charlie Jade, Lieutenant Joseph Turner from Call of Duty, just to name a few. He's a legendary actor and author that excels in everything he does. Ladies and gentlemen, please help me welcome the one, the only, Jeffrey Pierce. Jeffrey, how are we doing today?
That's a hell of an introduction.
Well deserved.
He does the best he can every time.
Oh my God, boy does he. No, it's so great to be back. For those of you who have been keeping up to date with kind of the goings on with Visioncon, you know that recently there was a bit of craziness involved and then also craziness in my own life. And then last Sunday was my birthday. So we took a break for that as well.
Happy birthday.
Thank you. Thank you. They don't tell you this, but 26 is a lot like being 25.
Yes.
Not too much difference, but it's great to be back. And I'm so honored to be joined by the one and only Jeffrey Pierce. But let's go ahead and get started, guys. So Jeffrey, you're a household name, whether it be on-screen acting, writing, voice acting, you name it. But what I want to start us out with is how we got here. Was showbiz always the plan, or did something happen later on in life that kind of brought us to where we are today?
Well, I mean, I knew at a young age what I wanted to do. I knew I wanted to be an actor. I didn't have any idea how I would get to that place. And anybody that I asked told me that's pretty much an impossible thing, that you really should try to find something better to do with your life. And you certainly, end up waiting a lot of tables and not finding any success. That was the general consensus for sure. But I fell in love with acting. I in school, in elementary school, and I couldn't let it go. I couldn't imagine devoting myself to something else, 40, 50, 60, 100 hours a week and being satisfied. And so that perspective held and survived sort of the ups and downs of adolescence and teenage years, and found myself employed as an actor when I was 19 and had a SAG card, and spent a lot of time, about 5 years, just touring with classical theater companies, doing Shakespeare. Yeah. It was a great introduction to how to be a professional, a great introduction on how to live on $200 a week. But when you're getting paid to do what you love to do and you're performing in front of audiences 7-8 times a week, it doesn't matter. As long as you have a roof over your head and a meal in front of you, that's being a millionaire. And I think that back those times, that 5 years, probably some of the most long-term satisfying experiences of my life.
The old adage, if you do what you love, you never work a day in your life.
Yeah, or you won't care how hard you have to work to do it. Sure. It doesn't feel like work. And it's sort of, I had to bridge the gap between knowing how to work really, really hard and work toward things. And that's what took me to Los Angeles. I found that I had to work just as hard, but it was not anywhere near as satisfying because I was working to get work.
Sure.
So I moved there when I was very old for the time. I was 26, happy birthday to you. when I showed up in LA, and I had to make up for a lot of time that I had lost, not knowing how to work necessarily on camera, not having an agent, not having any credits that made any difference to anybody in California. But just sort of kept my head down and chased as hard as I could, and was lucky to get doors opened and have opportunities, and I was ready when the bell rang, I guess, essentially.
Well, it might have been an uphill battle, but you've made one hell of a career.
Yeah, it has spanned a good amount of time and been steady, which is I really like what I've experienced. It's been phenomenal. I've been very lucky. I mean, like, lucky as hell. Yeah, I'm never not grateful for the run I've had.
It's a great mentality to have. Well, I personally am really chomping at the bit to get to talk about some of these characters. But first, I do want to reiterate something that fans of the show already know, that you can either message Visioncon directly, your viewers' comments and questions, as plenty of you already have, or you can put in the live chat your viewers' comments and questions, and we'll get to as many as we can at the very end. But I just want to say that for the new people that are joining us. So the first character I want to talk about, Jeffrey, we would be remiss if we did not talk about him. He's a character that I am so glad got more of a spotlight in the sequel to one of the most anticipated and world-renowned video games in recent memory, if not all time. Ladies and gentlemen, the first character I want to dive into is the one, the only, the greatest video game brother around, Tommy Miller. Now, before we kind of dive deep into Tommy, Jeffrey, let's give us just a brief overview of the character, maybe any fun anecdotes involved in getting or playing the part, anything at all.
Tommy is Joel Miller's baby brother, and they are together at the beginning of the end of the world, and he's there for the loss of his niece Sarah, and actually kills the man who did it. And then Tommy and Joel go on adventures that go wrong and separate. And then eventually Joel finds him, and they are able to reconnect, and he's able to help get Ellie headed towards Seattle. It it was one of those experiences that you know what's possible when you read the script, and you think, Jesus, this thing could be huge, and then the result exceeds any anticipated level that you could have had for it. It's been I think one of the real joys of my experience, because of the impact that the game, and not necessarily I in particular, has had on the gaming community, and the sort of the storytelling aspect of what the industry is trying to achieve now, because of what Neil and everybody at Naughty Dog did with that. It was great. I went in initially for Joel and had like one of those auditions where you're just like, that's just like out of the park. Beat that, motherfuckers. And Troy apparently came in and beat that, because Troy, I can't imagine anyone else in that role. And I was incredibly honored when Neil called like 6 months later, was like, you want to come and play Tommy? He's the brother of Joel. I was like, fuck yeah, let's do this. And it was great. It was a delightful experience, personally and artistically. And then the result is, it's history. It's great.
Utterly phenomenal. Well, and like we kind of spoke on it a little bit, but kind of diving deeper, you've played this pivotal role in the first game, but really in the second game is where Tommy really is fleshed out more, and he's coming to grips with the personal tragedy that he is facing. Right when the world seems like it's slowly but surely kind of coming back together. So when you were playing the role of Tommy, what were some of your favorite moments, or just maybe even some famous or favorite lines?
It's amazing what is possible now in motion capture, and the care that the animators put into recreating everything that you do it's just mind-blowing. Because I think I love the scene with Ellie when I come to bring her the food that Maria made for her. That was one where I just walked in, and it just like, it was the easiest, best thing I had ever done in that moment. It was incredibly complex and layered, and all those little details show up through the course of being turned into pixels and then painted by these incredible artists at Naughty Dog. And even the opening scene where Troy is cleaning the guitar,
oh god,
and telling me that story, was just like, I'm sitting there across from him and we're both just in. It's a rare experience on a set, because you've got crew and you've got cameras and you've got all this stuff going on to get to just like as pure an acting moment as you could have. And there's not a false moment in that experience that I can think of in terms of what ended up in the game and what we did on stage. It's really rare when that happens. Yeah, it was a really special time.
I'll say two of the most powerful scenes in that entire game you just named.
Mm.
Well,
yeah. Well, yeah, there's so many. Jesus.
Well, the next, we're going to jump ship to the next character. And so, ladies and gentlemen, I am familiar with a lot of nerd culture because I kind of have to be with my job. So I understand when somebody would maybe walk up to ask the average, con goer or nerd, for lack of a better term, if you could have a sci-fi show that was tragically cut short, have a second season, what show would you choose? I assume a lot of you would probably pick Firefly. And I understand that, but respectfully, I have to disagree because I don't care. Because the show that I would choose, if somebody walked up to me and asked Zach Wilson, what would be your go-to sci-fi show that deserved a sequel that did not get one? Ladies and gentlemen, my show that I would choose, and also the next character that I want to talk about, because you play the titular character in this show, ladies and gentlemen, I want to talk about Charlie Jade. So like we did for Tommy, Jeffrey, just give us a brief overview of the character, fun anecdotes involved, and getting the plane in part, anything at all.
Oh man, there are a million stories behind that show. Charlie Jade is a show about a detective in a parallel universe to ours who gets essentially jacked through this wormhole into our world. And over the course of his trying to understand the sort of doppelganger nature of this world that he's into, and has he lost his mind, what is he experiencing, he discovers that there's a third world, and that there is a corporation from his home universe within this multiverse that is intent on coming and taking all of the resources from our world and all of the resources from the third universe and pulling them into their own. And sort of Charlie's journeys to try to unravel that and stop it. It was shot in South Africa, in Cape Town, and it was an incredible experience. I'm sure, as you may have experienced, that the show really doesn't find itself until maybe episode 109. I think like what this is fair.
That's fair.
And the reason is they had done all this work, and Bob Wertheimer, who was really ahead of his time in terms of all of his conception for this, because this was 2004 and he's looking at these things. The difficulty was that the scripts were not written before I got off a plane in Cape Town.
Really?
Yeah, they had the finances in place. They had all this sort of they had the crew, they had the cast, they had everything, and they had fought like hell to get the money into escrow to do it. People were like taking out second mortgages on their houses, but they had the money to do the show. So they had a hard start date, and if that didn't happen, all that money was going to go away. So we showed up, and they had episode 3 written, I think. So we shot episode 3 first, and then we shot 101 and 102. And TJ Scott is just a legend as a director. Did a great job of sort of like working through a script that was not necessarily fully cooked.
Sure.
And then like the scripts for 104 came out, and we were all like, what are we doing? And I remember having breakfast with Bob Wertheimer and saying, look, we've got money, we got cast, we got these beautiful sets, we got these incredible hardworking crews who love what they're doing and will do anything, but we ain't got no scripts. So what are we doing here? This does not hold together. It was not my intention, but that ended up getting the writing staff fired.
Oh my God.
And so we were spinning wheels trying to make the scripts flyable. And they brought in a whole new cast of writers from Canada. And and we just did the best we could. And then by the time we got to 108, 109, there was a clear picture of what the show should be. There was a sort of steady hand in the writing room guiding it. And we, finished strong, not strong enough to earn a second season.
Nah.
But it was, it would have been, and there was a moment when we almost had a second season. Like 4 years later, Bob calls me, is like, how would you feel if we did the second season of Charlie Jade in China? I was like, I'd feel great. You call me when it's happening. But then it ended up not all sort of coming together, because there were so many threads that put the initial money together that they could not find a way to unknit what was to go forward.
Well, the whole writing thing kind of makes sense, because when I recommend the show to people, I do say, like, you got to get at least a few episodes in before it really kicks off. I think it's a great show, period. But I would be willing to admit that the later halves are, at least until you get into the spick of it, it gets really good from there. But kind of jumping from perhaps the character of Charlie and really just on-screen acting. So you are an on-screen actor as well as a voice actor. So I was curious to ask you if there's ever any overlap that you find benefits the other. Let me be a little bit more specific. Do you find that any of these skills that are specific to maybe on-screen acting maybe helps you with your voice acting as well, and maybe vice versa?
I think that the two are really very much intertwined for me. Had I not spent that 5 years doing Shakespeare and really training to, you got to be able to, at least back in that day, we didn't do mics. You had to be able to hit the back of a 2,000 seat theater with your voice and have everybody hear you. So all of that work gave me the foundation for a voice that can work and do, Call of Duty and do call outs and do, battle chatter for 4 hours on end without faltering. So without that in my toolbox, I would not be a very good voice actor for sure. And in terms of the voice work, sometimes, I did both of the audiobooks for my books, which was a terrible experience. Just because it is an incredibly time intensive thing to have to go through and edit all of it. And it gave me an incredible perspective on what audio engineers have to do to make you sound good. So I learned a lot in that process. But as an actor, I had to play, I think, 40 different characters. Wow. And then the narrator is not me. I felt like he had to be from hell. So I gave him sort of this, 18th century British accent for the attack. And I knew that I was taking a huge risk in doing that, but you have to sort of listen to that voice, and what it did was, over the course of that, because I'm playing a handful of Americans and Southerners and British and Cockney and Irish and Australian and German and French and Senegalese, and so when I finished it and finished editing it all together, I sat back and thought, well, shit, this is pretty good. These are some characters, a lot of these guys I could find a way to do on camera. And so I was able to use the sort of voice acting to stretch my sort of sense of what I have a capacity to do on camera when the moment's right.
And it really shows. And I'm really excited because we are going to talk about the aforementioned book, but let's not get ahead of ourselves because we have one more character to talk about. But first, before we continue, we're at about the halfway point. So I did want to say perhaps one more time that if you guys are new to the show and haven't already, either message Visioncon directly, your viewers, comments, and questions, or put them in the live chat. You still have some time to do so. I just wanted to reiterate that fact so you know that you can. So the last character I want to talk about, there's maybe some similarities in the tone of your book versus this game series, though far less fantastical. But then again, this game series, everyone in this chat already knows. It's one of the most popular, for better or for worse. If you like these games or not, you have to still acknowledge the fact that this is one of the most popular video game franchises ever. That, of course, is Call of Duty. So I'd like to spotlight an important character in one of the most recent editions, the World War II one. Let's talk about Lieutenant Joseph Turner. So like we said with the other two, give us a brief overview of the character, maybe fun anecdotes involved in getting or playing the part, anything at all, Jeffrey.
All right. Turner was one of those dream things that shows up. I so wanted to be part of Band of Brothers when it was casting. I jumped through a million hoops to get seen for that. And this was at a time when I did not have, I had some guest star credits maybe, but I was not like an actor with heat coming in to get seen for these parts. I had a manager. I didn't even have an agent when Band of Brothers was casting. But I read the book, and I wrote 3 monologues from different places in the life of the sergeant I wanted to play, and then I got costumes and I shot these 3 monologues, and I got it to casting and sent them to Tom Hanks and Spielberg and the head of Anthemopoulos at HBO, and I sent them along with these 101st Airborne Tamiya model figures that I hand painted and put in these little sort of boxes, and nobody responded. And they were like, no. And casting was like, no, he's not going to get an audition for this. There's no way. He doesn't have enough credits. He's too green. But the work, like, this was by far the best acting I had ever done on camera. And fortunately, I had written a script about World War I that my manager sent to Anthemopoulos at HBO. And he sent it along with the videotape of the audition piece and says, look, he would love to be considered as a writer for Band of Brothers, and he'd really like to audition. And she read the script and she watched the tape, and she called my manager back and said, anybody with this much skill and enthusiasm, we want to see. Whoever he wants to audition for, he can. So I let him know that who I wanted to play, and the casting directors sent me the audition sides at 5:00 on a Monday and said, you're reading with Tom Hanks tomorrow morning at 9 a.m.
Oh my God.
And so I prepared the hell out of it, and I went in and had this extraordinary meeting, and did not get the part.
After all that.
But they cast Donnie Wahlberg, and a year later I was a series regular on a David Milch TV show with Donnie Wahlberg. And I said, oh man, I would have loved to have been in Band of Brothers. And he said, it was fucking terrible. It was a terrible experience. Well, he had a young child at the time. Okay. And they were there for like 13 months in England. And most of the time, like, you had like one episode that was your episode, and then the rest of the time you were kind of in the background in the snow running with a gun. Personally, I would have loved every minute of it, but I understood why Donnie might not have felt that way.
Yeah, I guess I can see that.
And then when the casting director, who had been really hesitant to have me in, saw the TV show Big Apple, she called my agent and said, I'm watching this show Big Apple, and it's so brilliant and this amazing cast, and I see this young actor and I think, where was he when we were casting Band of Brothers? And then I realized it was Jeffrey Pierce. I was like, okay, good, that's making me feel great. Fuck. So I had been wanting to do World War II since 2000. So the audition came across, and I went in, and they initially hired me to play the sergeant.
Really?
And I think that they went back and said, we really need a star for that part, but we'd really like Jeffrey to be in the game. So would he play Lieutenant Turner and we'll have Josh Duhamel come in and play the sergeant. And it's like, yes, I don't care. I'll be private fucking bumfuck. I don't care. Just put me in. And it was an amazing experience. Incredible cast of guys, just lovely, lovely dudes. Jonathan Tucker and Josh, and we really got a chance to sort of form this core relationship where we'd fly into town once a month and work for 3 or 4 days and have this wonderful experience of just running around in the motion capture stage playing guns and then go home. Like, this is the best job ever. Yeah, so that's sort of my anecdote and my Turner story. Turner is this sort of like father figure for this group, who they end up losing over the course of the game. And it's nothing like having a good death, and they definitely gave me a good death.
They sent you off with a bang.
They did.
Well, and so when you found out that you were going to play, this pretty important character in a World War II installment of one of the greatest, or at least most popular franchises of all time.
Yeah.
Did you ever feel any additional pressure to perform well?
I mean, I think that pressure exists all the time, in a positive way. I
Sure.
mean, the hardest part about sort of biting the bullet and doing the audiobooks was, if this sucks, it's going to be 10 hours of suck. And you just put it out there. And so I think that there is always, for me anyway, a sense of need to do a thing as well as you possibly can, because you're going to be judged on what you do now, not necessarily what you did before. In the obituary, they'll be like, Tommy Miller, and he was fantastic. But if I do something tomorrow that's terrible, that's what's going to be, weighing over me.
Wow.
I think ultimately the goal is just got to be, you do your best every time out.
Sure.
And leave it on the field, and then it's going to be what it's going to be.
That's a very good way to look at it.
Yeah.
Well, we're going to jump ship a little bit from acting and voice acting, because this next thing, and Jeffrey Pierce, let it be known, you're a multi-talented human being. The next thing I want to talk about doesn't have to do about acting, a little bit with voice acting, but mostly about being an author. So I wanted to look into your series that you've created. I want to talk about, hold on. I want to talk about the Reckoning series.
Okay.
So, give us, just tell us about it, maybe some inspirations that came about it. And then afterwards, and our visual listeners, or watchers rather, will get to enjoy this. But a special treat for our audio listeners on Spotify, we'll do a quick little excerpt reading. But first, tell us all about the Reckoning series.
The Reckoning is a horror action thriller. It's set in the beginning of 1917. Sort of starts on the front lines of the Great European War, the First World War. And the basic concept is that the horror that mankind has heaped upon itself reaches this tipping point, and it launches this bizarre Armageddon, where for lack of a better term, the sort of the demons of humanity, the evildoers over the course of the 100,000 years of Homo sapiens being on the planet, rise up in the bodies of the dead and start to dismantle the world. So that's the sort of like the idea, the concept behind it. I wrote it because, well, my mom's dad, she was the youngest of 7, and he was 19 years old and fought in the First World War. And so I've always felt connected to that conflict because I look exactly like him. I never met him, but I'm sort of the spitting image of him. So I wanted to, know as much as I could about that war. And as I studied the history of it, I realized how sort of instrumental it is on every aspect of the world that we live in today. And it's my sort of sense of like we just don't know enough about that conflict as a nation in the United States, or maybe as a people, as human beings, to understand what it did and what it sort of put us on the pathway to. So as I said, I wrote a World War I script, and that's one of the things that got the attention of HBO when they were casting Band of Brothers. And it's incredibly difficult as an unknown writer to get a movie that does not have a happy ending greenlit. It was a sort of straight, Daniel Day-Lewis should star in this movie, and it was a good script. But people want to have a happy ending, especially if they're going to have to spend that much money to make it. So that sort of fell by the wayside. It was a writing sample for a long time. And then I was doing some more reading, and I had a dream about turning the story into a horror instead of a historical drama, and realized that there might be a better audience for something like that than for a sort of straight drama. And it might hit more people if it was done that way. And that was the spark that led to it.
That's a genius conversion for that exact reason. I mean, this is definitely, yes, myself included, love a good happy ending, but it's hard to find most historical dramas that have those, which I can understand might make them hard to market. However, what is a genre that is rife with not happy endings and yet still is very easy to market? Horror. So that was a genius idea to combine the two together.
Yeah. It turned into something bigger and larger in scope than I would have conceived if I were thinking of it strictly for film or TV or as a series. I think that you have to listen to those little voices and assume that there is some genius happening there. So I dug in and wrote, and then wrote the second one, and I'm 75,000 words into book 3 right now.
Oh my God.
Yeah, it's a grind. Hey kids, you can grow up and be an actor and make money. You can't really grow up and be an author and necessarily expect to make money, at least not in the short term. It is an incredible consumption of time and energy, but once the bit's in your teeth, you got to run.
All right, guys. Well, a quick little treat for both our visual listeners, of course, but also especially our audio listeners who don't usually get to see the things that we show on screen during this. Jeffrey, real quick, if you would just give us a quick excerpt. Let's start with Other Tommy Got Hit.
All right.
Just do this paragraph and then we'll call it.
Other Tommy got hit by a burst of shrapnel. He was so disfigured that they all agreed maybe it was not even him, as they stared at the remains later on. Harry could not get over the fact that an ear was missing. The grotesque visual stuck with him. Plenty of other things were gone too, which made him unrecognizable as their Other Tommy. Yet here was that full head of curly brown hair on the yellowy white skull. It looked a great deal like Other Tommy's coiffure. But that absent right ear had been sheared clean off, as if some skilled butcher had applied a very sharp meat cleaver to it. And the ear's absence made the corpse look utterly alien. After all, Other Tommy definitely had 2 ears. So how could this be him? And they did their best to promote the idea amongst themselves that maybe their Other Tommy had been captured by the Jerrys and was now sitting out the war in Berlin. Perhaps this was some other poor, bloated, dead, earless bastard. Inside, they all knew better.
Oof. Chills. Guys, I have the links. If you are watching this live on Facebook, I've got the link to the Reckoning series, plus a bunch of other links in the live chat. If you're watching this live, if you're watching this later on YouTube or listening to this later on Spotify, I got those links down in the description box below, guys. I highly recommend you guys checking that out. There's an audio version and print version. And on that note, guys, if you have not already, message Visioncon directly your viewers' comments and questions, or put them in the live chat. You still have time to do so, but it is your last chance because, ladies and gentlemen, we're in the plug zone. Jeffrey Pierce, now is your opportunity to advertise, plug, promote, whatever verb you want to use. Anything you want, the floor is yours, sir.
Well, look, the joy of acting live in the theater is that the audience is right there and you get to experience it with them. The joy of doing something like The Last of Us is you work with incredible actors and artists and you experience it with them, and then that reverberates and reaches the audience through the games. The the horror of being an author is writing into the void and hoping that you strike a chord. And the joy of it is when the audience finds it and it bounces it right back to you. So if I would promote anything, I would love to share my books. If you like horror, if you like historical drama, I mean, I think that it has a nice connection of both. And so that is where I would love to place my energy. Check him out. And if you follow me on Twitter or on Instagram, I am always happy to, especially on Twitter, answer any questions as they come up about the books and engage there as much as I can. Since I don't, with COVID, I can't do like a book tour. Twitter is kind of my book tour. I do streamily things on occasion. We've done one with Troy and we may do another. So if you follow on Instagram or Twitter, you'll see when those events are happening. And ideally, when cons are up and running again, I'm going to be in that circuit as much as possible.
Woohoo!
So to engage in person and sign in person and shake hands and get pictures in person will be a joyful thing after this long drought.
Oh, it's been so long.
God.
Well, the Streamily, though, for because I know a lot of the fans of the show are big fans of getting autographs, myself included. So make sure to check those out, guys. And I've got all of those links plus a couple extra in the live chat if you're watching this live on Facebook or watching this later on YouTube or listening to it later on Spotify. They'll be down there in the description box below, guys. And with that said, we're going out of the plug zone to go into our final segment, viewers' comments and questions. So like I always do, guys, I'm just kind of trying to balance it between Facebook and Facebook live chat and then the messenger. So give me 1 sec to bring that up. Okay, so Susan tuned in and said, "Hey Jeffrey, as a fellow author, I have my own inspirations, but I was curious to know any of yours."
When I first started, hi Susan, nice to meet you. David Milch, who is a legend, Deadwood, and just an incredible, gifted writer. I talked to him on set. I said, I want to write. What should I read? And he said, Flannery O'Connor is probably the best writer of short story that you're ever going to find. So I recommend Flannery O'Connor. I mean, the sort of detail that she is able to create and the world she's able to create in 20, 30 pages are phenomenal. So I recommend that. And James Baldwin. They're just phenomenal, genius, personal in their work, and they do not give a fuck what you think of them.
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
So Charlotte tuned in and wanted to know, when you're not working, what are some of your favorite hobbies?
Hi, Charlotte. I spend a fair amount of my time when I'm not working pursuing work. I don't think that's a hobby.
Fair.
I have tried to, I tried gardening for a bit and was not good at that. And so I build motorcycles.
Okay.
And I work on my house and do as many projects as I possibly can with my own hands and sweat and blood. And I find those satisfying just because pursuit of acting, a pursuit of any art form is based on a lot of intangibles. And when you build a motorcycle and you start it, you know whether what you did worked or not. When you do a project, you build wall or a fence or a sunroom, you'd know if it didn't collapse, you did a good job. It's tangible and real. So I try to keep my hobbies in the world of creating things that I can put my hands on and touch.
I dig it. All right, so Chris tuned in and said, "Hey Jeffrey, I don't have a question this time, but I'm in the middle of The Last of Us, two, and I love you as Tommy. You're awesome for the role."
Oh, thank you. Thank you. That is I'm honored. It's my pleasure.
All right, so Ryan tuned in and said, "Are there any roles that you've done throughout the years that you wish had more of a spotlight?"
No, I feel like the everything sort of plays out the way that it plays out. I would have loved to have seen Alcatraz become something bigger than it was. The pilot was so far away from what the show became. I think that was a moment missed because there were a million cooks in that kitchen trying to put that thing together and make it fly. And there was no, initial intention to ever see my character again. So when it was, when he came in, when the test audiences were like, "That guy's pretty cool," they weren't quite sure what to do with it. So I think that if I had anything that if I could have put my finger on a scale in terms of like, let's do this, I think that one would have been a lot of fun.
For sure. All right, so we got time for about 4 more, guys. So the next one's going to be from Ross, who wanted to know if you could have a beer with any of the characters that you've either voiced or played as during your career, which one would it be?
I have a beer with them all the time. I do, my affection for Tommy is probably about the same as most of the audience. He's just has an endearing quality to him that was not necessarily. I mean, I'm plenty endearing, but Tommy is a really sort of like there's an innocence to him despite what he's experienced that I find refreshing. So yeah, let's have a beer with Tommy Miller.
Oh,
Maria
yeah.
can come too.
Hell yeah. All right, so Tyler
Joel gets really dark when he drinks.
Oh, of course. Yeah. It's to be expected. So Tyler tuned in and said, "Hey, Mr. Pierce, I just wanted to know, and this is a little bit off topic, but what are some of your favorite movies?"
The Godfather.
Okay.
Apocalypse Now. Network. The Mission. Raiders of the Lost Ark. I have not seen it yet, but I really feel like the Suicide Squad is going to be a favorite movie.
Oh,
I really feel like that. Yeah, I mean, those all date me, except for the Suicide Squad a bit. But I feel like if you're gonna sit down and look for sort of benchmark works, a lot of those benchmark movies that have been sort of there's a lot in today's work that is an echo of those initial pieces. So trying to see those movies and see them see the way that they've impacted everything that's been done since, I think is powerful. Mm-hmm. I love Seven Samurai. I love Yojimbo. I love, Kurosawa could do no wrong. Yeah, I mean, I think if you're looking for cinema, go to the vaults and check it out.
All right, so Kylie tuned in and said, "While you nail it at both, do you prefer acting on screen or voice acting?"
It's interesting because there is voice acting is sort of a broad, a little bit broader. I mean, motion capture and facial capture for games is an absolutely liberating experience, just because you are able to use your imagination to flesh everything out. And so, and you're not sitting around all day waiting for coverage to come your way or for the close-up, because you're getting all of it at the same time. So I think that, I'm not going to retire from on camera because that's fantastic and exciting and great to go to sets, and it's an entire experience. There is a purity to working on a motion capture stage that is you can't replicate it on a set necessarily.
Interesting. All right.
Yeah.
Well, our last one's going to be from William, who tuned in and asked, I'm a struggling actor, so I was wondering if you had any tips.
Tips. Watch all of the great films. Watch all of the great series. Read as much as you can to understand that that is the core. What's on the page is the core of anything that you're going to do. And you have to sort of make your own way. It is, I don't know where I would begin if I was starting now, but I think you cannot go wrong by looking at the route. And I think that you have to sort of check what your purpose for doing it is. You can be as an incredibly successful actor in your hometown theater and put together a group of people that you love and adore and put on plays and find ways to get audience to come to and make a real impact within that sort of pool that you live in. And there's nothing wrong with that. That is an exceptional way to live your life. And you're giving to the community that you live within. And in a different world, I would be very satisfied with that on my tombstone. So there's no reason to think, well, I can't be a successful actor. You just have to have a picture of what a successful actor means to you. If it means money and red carpets and fame and all that shit, I can tell you all that stuff is absolutely overrated. You know, it doesn't satisfy your soul. It doesn't let you put your head down at night feeling like, wow, I walked a red carpet and they were taking my picture and the checks all cleared. And, you know, you can be a successful actor in terms of whatever you want that to be. And I suggest that if you're going to pursue Los Angeles or New York, that you still find a way to be a successful actor, whether you're working or not. And that means, you know, creating that community and doing plays and testing your work and doing the best you can every time out. That's I think the best advice that I can give, because that can grow into just about anything. But yeah, I would not, if it's about money and fame, those things are hollow at their core.
Well, William, now you have all the tools necessary to become the next Jeffrey Pierce.
There you go.
All right, and guys, that's about all the time we got. So, ladies and gentlemen, this has been episode 71 of Visioncon Live. Before we wrap things up, Jeffrey Pierce, are there any final thoughts you'd like to lead us on? Sage-like wisdom, anything at all?
My daughter, before I went to LA for work, I think it was probably on Call of Duty. Her advice was work hard, be kind, and have a good time. She was 6 years old at the time. I was like, that is advice for the ages. So yeah, work hard, be kind, and have a good time.
That isn't sage-like wisdom. I don't know what is. Ladies and gentlemen, this has been episode 71 of Visioncon Live. Thank you so much for watching. As always, I'm your host, Zach Wilson, but much more importantly, this has been my very special guest, Jeffrey Pierce. Make sure to check out all the links down in the description box below. And until next time, guys, always remember that life's better when you have friends to share it with.